Hey guys, we're here at Blacklist Performance today with Snot Rocket to play around on the dyno. December and January is kind of like my off season, so we've been doing a lot of maintenance to the car and kind of preparing it for the next season or the next year of races. So we have Sick Week coming up in 2 weeks, and we have a new engine for the car that's going to be going in there after today. So we've been running the stock crank engine, and as you guys saw at FL2K, when the car started trapping over 215 miles an hour, we started noticing main bearing wear. We actually had a main bearing failure at FL2K, and we switched the engine at that race, and we ended up winning that race. So that engine is still currently in the car. We've been racing it all winter, but it also has a stock crank, so it's been susceptible to the same issue we had with the other engine. Crankshaft's flexing under the higher power, and it's touching down on the main bearings, causing just excessive wear on those bearings. So I put a set of bearings in the engine after Maryland, and we've been running it ever since. We ran it at Mod Nats, we went at Maryland, we won that race, won Mod Nats. Recently we went up 8th mile testing at a rental, went 4.0 at 185, which, you know, we've just been blown away. The car is continually getting faster, withstanding more horsepower and refining the combo. But as you know, with us, good enough is never good enough. So we're gonna be here today to see if we're leaving anything on the table. We're gonna dyno a couple different ways, a couple different boost levels, and see where we're at. The last time we had this car in a Hub Dyno was about a year ago, before Sick Week, and it made 2,500 horsepower, around 48 pounds of boost. Last time we raced the car, we were approaching 55 pounds of boost. So we're assuming that we're in the 2,800 range, you know, but it's kind of unknown once you get to that power level. It doesn't, you know, the calculators and things don't seem to add up the same way. So today we're gonna test the things we need to test. We're gonna run it at the power level we've been racing it at, see where it is, and if we're close enough to the 3,000 number, we're gonna go for it. See if we can make 3,000 horsepower on a factory cast block, factory crank, factory head Coyote engine. We've been excited all week just at the possibility of making that number. Just saying it out loud is crazy to me. You know, a few years ago, I would have never said, yeah, we're gonna make 3,000 horsepower with my car, but here we are today. Maybe we'll make 3,000. Okay, so I've realized I've never given you a proper rundown of my car. It started life as a 2012 Ford Mustang Boss 302. I purchased the car as a rolling chassis from Joel Steele. Joel Steele raced this car in stick shift racing. At the time I bought it from him in 2021, he had the stick shift world record, 680 at 218 miles an hour. So I knew that the chassis was a good car. I was racing my original Snot Rocket Mustang, which you may or may not know that car. I took it basically from a stock Mustang, you know, all the way up through the years to the 6-second street car that it was. The car was awesome. We went 690 with it. I felt complete with the car. The next stage for me and my racing future, my Coyote developed future, was to, you know, go faster, make more horsepower and push harder. Instead of cutting that car up to make it lighter, make it safer, to do the things I needed to do to make it a better race car, would have taken a lot of time and really would have undone everything that I did to it over the years to make it what it was. So instead of doing that, I sold that car. Zach Myers bought that car, and he's continued with what we started with that car. He's actually made improvements to the car, put a better roll cage in it. It is still, like right now, I'll argue with anyone, that is the most beautiful, the best put together actual street car that is raced, period. The car is awesome. It's gonna run high sixes, has power windows, all factory body components, all glass. It's just a really good example of a street car. This car, on the other hand, is a really good example of just a freaking monster, right? Like this is, you know, the most borderline race car, street car that you can imagine. Obviously the car was built in the intention for drag racing. So, you know, I don't get into the street car arguments, but at the end of the day, we do drag and drives in this car. So it's as streetable, you know, as the other cars, and the fact that we can drive this car 1,000 miles with the trailer on the back, race it 5 days in a row with no major changes from the engine or the fuel system. How it sits right now as you see it, we could just take off and cruise and drive it everywhere we want. Now, obviously, it's not very comfortable, or it doesn't have a very good ride quality. So, the versions of street car, the areas of that kind of change. But at the end of the day, I think we drive this car more than a lot of the guys racing in street car shootout classes. So, it's pretty neat to be able to keep both aspects of it. Now, eventually, maybe this thing will morph into even more of a race car. Maybe we'll lose the water, lose the big fuel cell and all that stuff. But we'll see where it goes. Honestly, it's faster than I ever imagined it would be how it sits. I don't need a push car, I don't need a bigger trailer, so I think I'm gonna just keep rocking it how it is and see how fast we can go and still drive it from track to track. So the chassis of this car is basically a 25-2 certified chassis. It has been back halved. It's a parallel 4-link, and it uses stock style front suspension. So it still has like a factory K member. As you can see, the complete body, quarters, door jambs, firewall, front strut area, frame rails, all that stuff is original Mustang, and then the chassis is built off of that. To become what it is now. It has carbon fiber front end. Currently has fiberglass doors, but it's getting carbon fiber doors next week to take even more weight out of it. The lighter we can make this car, the easier it is on the engine, the faster we can go with it. The suspension and brake setup on this car is pretty standard race car stuff. So I use Sandtuff struts and coilovers front and rear. I've been running Sandtuff for a long time. There's a lot of different flavors of suspension. Everyone has their favorite, but man, I've had really good luck with his product, driving it on the street and racing it, and knock on wood, no failures that I need to do anything with. Brake system is TBM. TBM to me is by far the best drag brake out there right now. Lightest, most consistent. As you guys maybe saw the video, it stopped this car 200 miles an hour when I had parachute failures. So, I'll never go away from them for sure. The electronics package on the car consists of a Motec M150 ECU, E888 for thermocouples and expansion, C1212 dash, and a PDM30. The wiring on the car I did myself, and it utilizes Rife sensors throughout the car for data acquisition. The transmission is an M&M close ratio turbo 400, 3-speed, with a Pro Torque lockup converter. As you've heard in a lot of the videos, we utilize some unique transmission tuning and converter tuning to make the car sound like maybe it shifts more than 2 times. We utilize strategy like this to make the car efficient. Efficiency is the name of our game because we're dealing with a very small cubic inch engine with a lot of stock components. So to make the car run the ET we need to squeeze every horsepower out of it and put it down to the track the best way possible. The turbo system on the car was built by us. Jim Braun is the master fabricator on this car, and he did all the construction of the turbo kit. We had a really cool set of CNC flanges made for the headers with integrated EGT bungs. We used all the highest grade, like 321 stainless and Tycon titanium where we could use it to save weight. Basically, we've used all the knowledge that we've gained over the years with the earlier turbo systems, and then brought in knowledge from Jay and Job and other people that we know to basically get pipe sizing and routing the best we could. Turbo Smart wastegates, blow-off valve have been phenomenal. They do everything we need to do. Wastegates have position sensors, which are really cool to see how they work down the track. The turbochargers on the car are Precision 83, 85 Next Gens. When we first built this car, it started life with 76, 75 Sportsmans. Next Gen lineup came out. We started working with Precision closer, 76, 80 Next Gen, 80, 80 Next Gen, and now 83, 85 Next Gen. So basically we're just, incrementally going up in turbo size and turbine size, as we feel it's needed for our engine combo to keep the quick spool characteristics of the car for racing, and it's just been wonderful. Intercooler on the car is a plazmaman air-to-air intercooler. We've gone through 2 revisions of this intercooler. As horsepower increased on the car, we needed some flow to increase, and they built us a new one. They sent it to us. As you know, I've been running their products forever, and favorite thing about that company is just we're always testing and then modifying and changing parts to keep up with the horsepower demands that we're running. Onto the fuel system. We run a mechanical, cable-driven fuel pump. As a drag and drive car, we need a pretty large fuel capacity. So we have about an 8 to 10 gallon fuel cell that's in the back of the car. Because the fuel cell's in the back of the car, the fuel pump needs to be in the back of the car. So the fuel pump is mounted directly next to the fuel cell, and there's a cable that runs off the oil pump to the back to drive the fuel pump. This gives us all the fuel flow that we need. There's an air-motive fuel pressure regulator and twin ID 2600 injectors on each cylinder. Now on to my favorite part of the car and of the whole program in general is the engine. I got into Coyote engines when I bought my 2014 Mustang. So we're coming up on 10 years now of running this engine. And I met Joe Irwin basically when I wanted to put pistons and rods in my stock Gen 1 engine. This was the first time we started working together, first time I met him through Jim Braun, and that's sparked to what we're doing today with possibly 3,000 horsepower stock block Coyote. It's kind of hard to even believe what we're doing when back then we were trying to make 800 horsepower, and now we're making 2,000 horsepower, more than we were trying to make. The engine rundown is pretty unique to the horsepower and the ET numbers that we're running. There's a lot of high power Coyotes out there. There's some billet engine cars. There's a Pro Mod car that's been faster than us, but what we're doing, we're in our corner doing our thing, and it's really neat because I want to be able to keep the car a drag and drive car, and be able to have something that we can sell to the community that they can just put into their way more factory of a Mustang, their street car, and it just bolts in and works and drives. And basically that's a version of the engine that I'm running now. The breakdown on the engine is pretty simple. So it starts life with a factory block purchased from Ford. The block we're using now comes in the 2020 Plus GT500, known as the Predator. That block, we believe, is the strongest, utilizes the 12mm head stud, similar to the Gen 3 block, but the deck looks a little different. And that's the block we've been running now for the last couple of years in this car, and we haven't broke it yet. I'm sure we're getting close to breaking it, but it's been solid. This engine block utilizes a standard factory deck, copper head gasket with an O-ring and receiver groove. The cylinder heads are off a GT350. These heads are the highest flowing production heads and utilize a nice longer valve so we can get more lift from the camshafts. Camshafts are custom competition cams grind with Ferrea valves and PIC springs. The timing components are mostly Ford. The lifters, the followers, primary timing chains, primary timing chain tensioners are all just stock Ford parts. Has a billet crank gear, has some upgraded slide rails, upgraded secondary timing components, and it's all been working really well for us. The crankshaft is a factory Ford crank that's currently in the car. As you guys might have seen on other videos, we're at the limit of that crankshaft in the sense that the crank is flexing and starting to cause increased main bearing wear. We haven't broken the crankshaft, which is great. So it would take out a set of bearings faster than it should. We have a billet crank engine that's getting built now that we're going to go into the car to push to the next level. Connecting rods are MGP aluminum rods, and the pistons are from Manley, spec'd out by Fast Forward Race Engines. That's it, that's the whole engine. So we got a stock block, sleeved, factory head, stock timing components, cams, pistons, and rods. We're approaching 3,000 horsepower. As we come up through horsepower numbers on the cars, we've reached different points to where we find the next weak point. We had a cam cap failure, so we moved on to billet cam caps. Now we're to the point of the crankshaft, so now we're going to put a billet crankshaft in there. We like to slowly document this and bring the power level up and bring the component level up as needed, basically for everyone, for development, for the industry, so that way we don't end up with a $60,000 billet engine with billet cranks when maybe it's not necessary. So this engine here that's in the car is pretty basic in the sense that it has more Ford parts in it than it has aftermarket parts, and the amount of power that it's creating is magnificent. Oil system on the car is a Peterson 6-stage dry sump pump and a Peterson tank. As we get into higher horsepower and higher RPM, we needed to move, to a better oiling system than the factory oiling system to, get better crankcase ventilation, lower crankcase pressures, and higher oil pressure throughout the engine. The cooling system on the car mimics the factory cooling system. It utilizes stock water pump, stock belt drive, stock alternator. It has a little oversized radiator just because a stock plastic radiator really isn't going to go into a car like this, and we have AN hoses going to it, so in case coolant pressure increases, a clamp doesn't blow off. But it's pretty neat to be able to do what we do, to make the power that we make and run the ETs that we run with, it's just got a Ford alternator, Ford water pump, and that's so we can drive the car. It's a drag and drive car, so it needs these components on it to be able to run, charge the battery, and go down the road. That being said, it is on a 12-volt battery system, which is another, kind of unique thing for a car at this level. And again, simplicity is kind of where I try to go with the race car, because I want things to be reliable. As many factory components as you can have, the more reliability you have. Factory components are designed to run 100,000 miles and be on the road for years and years and years. So keeping those components and accessibility to those components when they fail are a lot easier than very unique aftermarket components. So things like that on drag and drives, like, oh, my alternator goes bad, I can go to AutoZone and get an alternator and put it on and be back on the road. right, so this is the official Snot Rocket committee. We joke about the committee all the time, but this is the brain power and the manpower behind this car. This is my car, obviously, I work on all the time. Jim Braun's a fabricator. Job's tuning the car. Jay is consultation and part of every inch of the car. And then Joe, of course, Fast Forward Racing Engines, builds the engines for the car. I met Jay with the Coyote stuff many, many years ago in my old car, and maybe he could tell you a little bit how far we've come, how much fun we've had with this car, and it's brought everyone together to make it really cool.
It is a pretty cool adventure. I had some history with modular Ford stuff, and then I dipped away to do Toyota things, and then to get back involved with a much better version of the modular Ford engine was pretty exciting. And we met at a hot rod drag week, and Brett was having a problem with an ECU, and I said, hey man, if you ever want to not have the feeling you're feeling right now, just get into a Motec and everything will be different moving forward. And then I successfully converted Job into getting into Motec stuff, because he's been doing fuel injection forever, and he's arguably one of the best guys I think to ever mess in that field. Thank you. Very accomplished small tire racer. So it's been a neat adventure, and to have access to just a group of people that do a thing like this is pretty special.
Yeah, there's just the collective minds. If I make a decision hey, I think I want to do this, and then just running around the circle, and then there's input, or someone would be like, hey, I think we should do this, or Joe's like, hey, you need to fix this, and then I fix that. Or today when I'm like, hey, is 12,000 okay? And he's like, no, 12,000's not okay. No. We keep it tight, so there's not really a bad decision made, because we evaluate each decision that's made on the car and try to make an educated decision on it. But it's been fun.
No, it's cool. Every awesome race car has a group of guys that are a team, and this is
here we are. And there's still plenty of people behind the scenes and companies, but this is the core group that texts probably 7 times a day, every single day, all day long. The amount of hours that go into there's a lot of hours that go into physically working on a race car, but the mental planning and everything else that goes on to a race car, you can't add up those hours.
Absolutely not.
It's your life.
Yeah.
It's a consuming effort.
So we've been working with plazmaman since 2018 with the inception of their Coyote billet intake manifold. The manifold has been outstanding. We've been running it ever since, put on multiple cars, set a lot of records with it. But as we grow with the engine platform and make more and more horsepower, we're trying to find horsepower everywhere we can. The key to our combo is efficiency. So the more efficient we can make the engine run, the happier the engine is, the more horsepower we can make, and the faster the car can be. We're dealing with a 300 cubic inch engine with 83 millimeter turbos. So we're limited on horsepower for engine size. So we have RPM on our side, and we have good airflow on our side. So a company with good airflow is a good intake manifold. Today we're going to be testing a larger plenum. So the plenum is the area of the intake that holds the air where the engine is pulling the air from. The current intake that's on the car was designed in 2018 when Coyotes were making 1,600 horsepower. That's what we were making. They weren't necessarily designed for the 3,000 horsepower number we were trying to make today. Now, plazmaman has been involved in making intake manifolds for many engines that make well over 3,000 horsepower, so they're not new to this game by any means. We were talking to them over the winter, and we wanted to play around with the idea of trying a larger plenum on my engine. So they made us a new lid that bolts directly onto the current intake manifold, and it takes the current plenum volume of 1.5 liters and increases it to 3 liters. We're going to switch the intake manifold lid. Maybe it does nothing. Maybe we pick up 80 horsepower. We're about to find out. Okay, so as you saw, we swapped intake manifold lids to test the bigger plenum. We did a pool at around 50 pounds of boost, made 2,500 horsepower. We backed that pool up at the same power level, switched the lids, and did another run. What we learned was it didn't gain anything. Made the pretty much same peak power and the same power in the higher RPM, lost a little power on the lower RPM as the manifold pressure was coming up. It was actually lower, so the plenum took time to fill. It made the same power up top, less down low. So we know that there's no advantage to be had to going to a larger plenum. The original design plazmaman did is a great product and is going to continue to push us over the 3,000 horsepower mark. So we're done with our dyno session today. We made 10 pulls on the dyno. We fell a little short of our 3,000 horsepower goal. On the 7th run, we noticed we started developing a little coolant pressure. We monitor, all the pressures in the car, but that's one that we monitor pretty heavy. Normally it's 10, 15 pounds. We saw it creeping up close to 20, so we knew, we were at the end of the life of these head gaskets. Like I said in the beginning, this engine owes us nothing. We've been racing it since FL2K. We knew we were getting the end of its life cycle. That's why we have the fresh one ready for sick week. But we continued to run the car in the dyno just because we knew we had the new engine, right? So the coolant pressure cut is set at 30 psi. So if it got out of control where it was going to be dangerous, the ECU would have shut the engine off. We ran the boost level that we ran the last time we ran the car when it went 409 at 185, which was 56 pounds of boost. Made 2,930 horsepower at that boost level. I mean, it's amazing. Like, we knew it was getting close to 3,000. I mean, it's pretty much there, right? Another 2 or 3 pounds of boost, we would have been there. But we went ahead and stopped just because, like I said, we saw the coolant pressure and we don't want to make a bigger mess here than we need to. So we'll unstrap the car, get the engine changed, and be ready for sick week.